Hello, everybody, and welcome to Conversations with Matt Delacry. Last week, we talked about Christianity and blind faith. I try to make it clear that Christianity does not teach that we should just trust in Christianity or God or Jesus blindly. Instead, our faith should be based on something real, reason, evidence, an actual experience of God, something like these. And if we believe something and new evidence or a new way of looking things is presented to us, we shouldn't just close our eyes, shut our ears, and look away. We should be more interested in truth than in defending what we already believe to be true. So, what does it mean to have true faith? How do we have true faith without following blindly? And what does that even mean, true faith? Let's start by taking a look at faith in a human, because that's, I think, a little bit easier to wrap our heads around than, the God up there that we can't see and doesn't tend to answer us when we talk to him. So, faith in human. You go to the doctor and you tell the doctor what's wrong with you. Then the doctor writes a prescription you can't read. The pharmacist fills a little bottle with pills that contain who knows what. And they often come with a really long list of potential side effects. And WebMD tells you that you will certainly die, both taking the pills and not taking the pills. And you just take them anyway. Why? Because you trust your doctor. You take those mystery pills because you trust your doctor, your pharmacist, the medical schools and institutions that trained and licensed them. You don't have to actually know what's in them, and perhaps you don't even care. Probably be boring anyway. You just have to know that someone you trust says they will help. So there's two parts in trusting someone, or two parts at least in being justified in trusting someone. I'm not talking about trusting somebody you shouldn't. So two parts to trusting somebody. First, the person has to actually know what they're talking about. So to return to our doctor example, I have a doctorate, so I'm actually a doctor, but I'm absolutely the wrong kind of doctor. I know nothing about internal medicine or external medicine. So you really shouldn't trust me if I hand you a bottle of pills and say these will help. I have no idea what I'm talking about in the field of medicine. To wisely trust someone, that person needs to know what they're talking about. Second, the person you're trusting has to not only know what they're talking about, they have to have your best interest at heart. Because you wouldn't really want an evil doctor, would you? I mean, even if the doctor understood medicine really well, that wouldn't make you trust them, and you probably shouldn't, because maybe things will go well, maybe things won't. Depends on what sort of evil scheme the doctor has. I mean, it's not the same. Because how would you know if the what you were given is going to help or harm you? You wouldn't take pills from a doctor you knew might harm you on purpose. So the whole doctor example is really meant to make 2 points. If you're going to trust someone or have faith in someone, because basically the same thing. I mean, maybe there's a difference, but I think of them the same way. That person needs to both know what they're doing, and you need to trust that they have your best interest at heart. And that's why we have faith in God or trust God, or at least we should. God both knows what he's doing and he has our best interest at heart. Now, there's all sorts of questions we could ask at this point. How do I know God will try to help me and not harm me? How do I know God won't just ignore me when I'm suffering? How do I know I'm praying to the right God? Is there even a God at all? These are really, really good questions, and they don't have easy answers. So perhaps you can see why, or at least part of the reason why I and others spend so much time talking about truth questions like, is there a God? Or did Jesus actually rise from the dead? Because these questions get at the truth side of this trust faith thing. Because if there is no God, then you shouldn't bother praying at all. And living by faith would be frankly dumb. And if the God that exists is not the Christian God, then you should change your prayers and your faith is going to look different. So, faith or trust, as we're talking about it, is faith is trusting someone to act in your best interest and to be able to do so in a competent way. You should not put your faith in a being, human or divine, who either doesn't exist, doesn't know what they're doing, or doesn't care. But if there really is a divine being who knows what he's doing and does care, then we should probably trust him. It all comes down to that big if. If there is a divine being who knows what he's doing and cares about us. So that's this week. That's the discussion of what faith actually is, trusting in someone who both knows what they're doing and has your best interest at heart. And so we talked about blind faith last week. This week, the nature of what faith is, and next week we're going to talk about what living by faith actually looks like in your daily life. So let's move on to questions. First one: don't some religions require blind faith? How do I tell that they have my best interest at heart? Great question. They might. Honestly, I don't spend that much time studying other religions. I've spent most of my time focusing on Christianity and atheism and whether one or the other is true. So, for a detailed look at other religions, you're going to have to talk to somebody else who studied it more or somebody in one of those religions. Actually, do the second one. Talk to somebody who's in one of those religions and ask them what their faith teaches. It'll start a great conversation. Then you can talk about yours, and you don't even necessarily have to try to convert the other person. Just begin a conversation. Um, Another question: what are some filters to determine trustworthiness? Past actions is a good one. Uh, People, you don't tend to just trust somebody a lot that you just meet. Um, or if you do, the reason you trust them is because they come recommended by somebody else, somebody that you do trust. So you're not really trusting them, you're trusting your friend who recommended this person, which is the whole reason you have recommendations for job interviews and things like that, because you just met this person. How do you know if they're trustworthy? Well, if they're recommended by a friend, then, you know, somebody else has had years to vet them. So past actions, and you assume that people are going to act in a fairly consistent manner, not always right, but that's a good way to start. So if you're talking about faith in God, you're going to look at his past actions in the rest of Scripture throughout the rest of history, um, which very much needs you need to answer the why did he seem to be such a jerk in the Old Testament? If you're praying for him to help you out now, it's like, well, he doesn't always seem to be very nice. So you know, ask real questions. Don't just take the church answer. It's not an easy thing to. It's not an easy topic, and you need to get into it for real. And then you need to ask also, like, what has he been doing in your life? How has he been acting? Of course, with that one, there's also the how do we respond? So if we ignore him, then we can't exactly expect that he's gonna, pull through on us when we're ignoring what he's telling us to do. So it's sort of a two-way street with God. He tells us stuff and he helps us and leads us and whatever, but we have to like follow his lead. So it's not simple. Another question: what does Jesus say about faith? Ugh, a lot. It says a lot. Um, can you be more specific, or like reference a particular parable or something? Because yeah, he says you should have faith. It's really good. It helped. This too broad. Um, Other questions? Okay, I'm not seeing any more. So quick one today. Glad y'all were here. Next week we're going to talk about what faith looks like in your daily life. So have a good weekend. I hope you enjoyed the extra hour of sleep that you got, and talk to you next week.